Welcome into Bills Postgame Live. We are presented by the divorce and estate planning law firm of Clark, Peshkin, Maddy, Glab, alongside of Steve Tasker. And the Bills lose to the Bengals. Final score of 24-18. Buffalo moves to 5-4 on the season. The Bengals now 5-3 on the season. And the Bills got it within 6 points there at the end of the game. Just a couple minutes left in the fourth quarter, but it was too little too late. This team got out to a hot start, scoring right away, but then hit a lull as they really didn't put any points on the scoreboard, or multiple points on the scoreboard, in the second and third quarter. We're finally able to score a touchdown in the fourth quarter, but they just ran out of time with this one and couldn't get things going offensively. The defense, on the other hand, they were down guys, and then you have two of your starting linebackers not a part of this game plan, with Terrell Bernard coming out as he was downgraded to out due to a concussion, we found out heading into the second half, and the defense was able to hold things together. They only gave up 24 points to the Bengals, but it wasn't enough for the Bills at the end of the day. It's going to be a loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. A tough game because, of course, you go into a game like this, the lights are bright, it's Sunday Night Football, it's Josh Allen, it's Joe Burrow. The offense was able to kind of get into a rhythm in the week before, going with some up-tempo looks and hoping, let's capitalize on this. Let's get this going in a second week. And we didn't see that high-scoring octane offense that we're used to. So, Steve, what do you make of the offensive struggles in this one?
Well, it looked worse than it probably was because we're -2 on the turnover ledger. We had an interception early in the game and a fumble late in the game. It's a completely different game if you don't do that. You can't go -2 on the turnovers against a good team and win. That's first. And you come out and, it was an 8-point game at the end. But when you turn it over twice, once in the first half, when you've got to kind of try to keep pace with Cincinnati when they get out of the blocks fast until your defense figures it out, you can't give them an extra. Although the Bengals didn't get anything out of that drive, you didn't either. So you've got to get the ball back. You've got to do something with it. And they seem to get it going in the second half. You could see it happening. When the fumble came with Kincaid, you knew they were going to run out of time, or it was going to be very close because of the point in the game where it was. You just weren't going to get enough possessions. Yeah, tough for the rookie, tough for Dalton. He's been putting a great last couple games together, last few games together, and a tough fumble there by Dalton Kincaid, and an interception by Josh Allen. And it's games like these where you go, it comes down to just a few big plays, or it comes down to the turnover battle, the takeaway battle. The Bengals were able to force 2 takeaways. The Bills, on the other hand, none. All right, Josh Allen is on the podium, so we're going to get it right over to him.
They went to a junk 2 look, threw a bad ball. Guy made a play.
What is it going to take to shake the development of an offense?
Just finding a way to get into a rhythm. Come out in the opening drive, had some success moving the ball. Obviously hit a lull there and didn't score really till late in the fourth. We had our opportunities, didn't score before half. Didn't get 6 on the first drive of the second half. That's not complimentary football. You got to double dip and get into points there and give yourself a chance. And it's the old cliche: in order to win, you got to stop yourself from losing, and we didn't do that tonight.
Josh, on the intentional ground, would you expect?
I've never seen that call in my life. That's an option route. Gabe can sit it down or go. I wasn't pressured. They decided to make that call, and unfortunately didn't allow us to get points there. I wouldn't do anything different. I'm expecting him to run a go. He made the read to stop, and that's what it is.
That may or may not have had an impact on the outcome of the game, but you guys always talk about scoring before the half and then scoring coming out of halftime. How much of a swing could that have been to getting 3 points right now?
It's a huge swing. I think, again, whether it's 3 or 6 coming out of the half, scoring on back-to-back drives and giving yourself some momentum, that's huge in a game, especially against a good team like we just played. So it stings. Losing's never fun. Losing sucks. It's one thing though. We're not going to let this divide us. And we're gonna come together. We're gonna figure it out. I got a lot of faith in the men in this locker room and the coaching staff and the guys around me. So we're gonna figure it out.
Dalton had a great game. had a tough fumble there, though. Did you talk to him at all on the sideline? Will you talk to him after the game at all?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, obviously, turning the ball over. You know, we're going to have those, you know, and you got to limit those as much as you can. He's trying to make a play. Unfortunate.
Josh, you sort of touched on it there, but you know, big picture, you guys are at 4 losses now. You only had 3 all of last season. Do you feel confident that this is going to get turned around here pretty quickly?
Absolutely.
What gives you that confidence?
The guys in this locker room. We got a lot of guys that are unselfish players, guys that will do anything that they can to help this team win football games. And you know, this second half of the season, you know, realistically, if you want to look at it from a real view, you know, you need 10, maybe 11 wins to get into the playoff picture on the AFC. Got 8 games left. You know, we got 5 wins. So the math there, you know, it's not pretty. It's not going to be easy. But again, if there's a locker room that can handle this, it's this locker room right here.
Do you take anything away from 2021 where you guys kind of had this similar path a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing that we haven't seen before. But again, we just gotta find a way to put it together, and you know, whether it starts in practice throughout the week, or you know, it comes down to executing on game day. It's as simple as that in playing complementary football.
What is it about their defense? They obviously locked you up last year, and tonight it's kind of the same. What do they do that gives you so much trouble?
Yeah, they got some good players on that side of the ball. You know, do some different things with their linebackers and their D-line. Guys that, you know, aren't gonna cost them a game. They don't take many chances. They're smart football players over there, and they had a good game plan.
Last week you were able to get Gabe the ball a lot, and it seemed to open things up. Tonight, was it scheme? Was it just where you were looking tonight that he really wasn't as involved?
Couldn't tell you, honestly, until I watched the film. You know, I just try to run the play that's called and try to execute it to the best of our ability. And you know, there's a couple plays obviously that we want back.
It looked so easy on that first drive. I know it just happened. You got to watch the tape, but can you pinpoint over the next couple of drives like what went wrong?
Again, just lack of execution, not getting to a rhythm.
Seemed like you pushed the pace immediately against the Bucs. This game, it took a while to go up tempo. Why do you think it took so long to make that switch?
Just the game plan that we had going into it. I guess.
Josh Allen there asked about going up tempo and taking a little bit longer to get into that up tempo offense against the Bengals. We saw it pretty early on against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Steve, do you believe that going up tempo earlier on could have helped this offense? Josh Allen said it was a part of the game plan that we went to it later against the Bengals. Do you think it's as simple as saying it could have helped going up tempo earlier?
It could be, but we'll never know.
Right.
They waited until, but if they had it planned and strategized, they were going to go to it late. It was probably because they wanted to get an early and give Josh a look at the defense without snapping the ball. That doesn't mean they can't get to the ball and get on the ball early in the play clock, which they did. That gave Josh a chance to see what the defense was and see if he could get some keys from his film study and say, hey, listen, I got a chance. This guy's coming, that guy's coming. He got his protection set right. So the fact that they strategized and made sure they were going to go to it at some point lets me know that they had a plan for how well it would work, and also when they could spring it where it would be even more beneficial than just rolling it out of the first drive.
Right.
So whatever that strategy was, you got to know that they came up. It wasn't like we're going to keep it and then bring it out when it's too late. So yeah, I like the way Josh handled that. I like the way he answered it, and I think it has to do with coming out of the huddle early in the play clock and then getting to the line of scrimmage and taking their time. If you're going to go no huddle, the thought is snap the ball fast as well as get out and go no huddle. Otherwise, you're just breaking the huddle early and you're just giving them a look. And it could have to do with the defensive substitutions as well. All of that's in the mix, but I think the fact that they were going to go to it and go to it later in the game tells me they had a strategy for what they want to do early in the game and get a look at the defense of the Bengals.
Here's an interesting point to going no huddle later on. Usually when you're in a no huddle offense, your offense really isn't facing any pressure because you're getting the ball out so quickly. Well, they go to no huddle later on in the second half of the game, but in the first half of the game, Josh Allen was under pressure only 17.4% of his first half snaps. That's quite a low number compared to what Joe Burrow faced in the first half. He was under pressure on 40% of his snaps in the first half. So the offensive line did a good job of keeping Josh Allen clean in the first half there.
Yeah, that's right. And Josh helps himself out a little bit. Now, he did go down a couple of times tonight, and there was a couple of times I thought, I know a lot of people are down on Chris Collinsworth. He called it right. Bengals ran a few techniques that worked really good for them. They caught the Bills being a little sloppy up front. Josh had to get rid of it. The pass interference, the intentional grounding call that happened early in the first half. I'm with everybody else. I was shocked that was an actual call in an NFL game. Josh was not under pressure. That's one of the criteria that has to be met. And he threw it down the field past the line of scrimmage on an obvious miscommunication. And to have him throw that flag, I thought was brutal. I thought there was a couple of calls, and Bills fans always pick out the calls that went against the Bills as being the bad ones. The Cincinnati Bengals will have some calls like that as well, but the pass interference, the roughing the passer early in the first quarter of this game really hampered the Bills' ability to get off to a fast start on both sides of the ball. And you got to overcome it. They had plenty of time to do that, but nevertheless, that slower start because of those penalties kind of had a ripple effect, I think.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some positives here because there were a couple defensive players that had some pretty big games. One of those guys is Dane Jackson. So this week's Player Spotlight is presented by Microsoft Surface. Microsoft Surface is the official tablet and sideline technology of the Buffalo Bills. Dane Jackson had 3 passes defensed, only 3 total tackles. But, Steve, he was effective when he was close to the football tonight.
A couple of those passes defense were big plays down the field to
saved a couple touchdowns.
Yeah,
from
Damar Chase. So they had the tackle there, as you see, and then this pass defense on Chase, which was enormous early in the game. This one, I think Joe goes down the sideline, and he gets it loose, and that was going to be a 1st and goal inside the 5, if not a touchdown. He knocks that away, and then this one, the big one down the field, he catches back up on a little bit of an underthrow by Burrow, and breaks that pass up. Those were key plays in this game in the defense's ability to get the Bengals off the field. Yeah, 24 points. You wish you could hold them to less.
I know.
But that's not bad.
Yeah,
it's not a bad game by the Bills defense.
It's not bad given knowing the circumstances that the defense was facing. Terrell Bernard came off early in that game, and we didn't see him for the rest of the game because he was downgraded to out due to a concussion. We'll hear more from him or more about him when we hear from Sean McDermott tonight, possibly, if not on Monday when we hear from Coach again. But this defense that has been riddled by injuries, and we saw Linval Joseph, one of the new additions to the defensive line, go in tonight. We also saw one of the new additions to the cornerback room, Rasul Douglas, saw some time too. So this defense is still trying to figure out how to make life work with a lot of the injuries that they've faced, and we'll see what the status is for Terrell Bernard, but it might be a week without their starting Mike linebacker or so. I have no idea what the timetable could be, but they might have to live with Dorian Williams and Tyrell Dodson in there, or possibly going with quite a bit of dime-heavy looks without 2 of your strongest linebackers in there, in Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard. So tough sledding for this defense who has just faced injury after injury, and throughout the game there were guys who are down after plays and being looked at by trainers, but they only give up 24 points to a team that looked like they were getting back to scoring 30-plus points a game. Heading into this game in the last 3 weeks, they had scored over 30 points in 2 out of the last 3 games. We know this Bengals team now is on a 4-game win streak, but they were allowing only 5.9 yards per play. I know in the early part of this game, the number was pretty high as the Bengals got off to a hot start, scoring on their first 2 offensive drives. But what impressed you about the way the defense was able to play?
Oh, the fact they kept him off the scoreboard one. You could have said there's a lot of things. You wish you could have churned out some turnovers to even it back up, but they were behind the 8 ball twice with 2 turnovers where they were on the field. One really was a lost opportunity by the offense going in the red zone when Kincaid late in the game, but Josh put them right on a short field coming back, and they held them without any points. They got the ball over on downs. They punted the ball back to the Bills after the interception. So -2 on the turnover ratio was the Bills' defense. And you said it, Maddy, we've had a lot of injuries, and it's not just backup players that are helping out. Now it's new players that are helping out, and there's a difference. So not only are there some guys that we didn't expect to play, there's some guys that weren't on the team when the season kicked off that they're having to get meaningful snaps in the game. So it's been a struggle, but the Bills' defense did extremely well, and they were the victim, we thought, of some calls that could have gone either way as well. So, yeah, I thought the defense really showed out big. You could say what you want there. You'd love it if they could get them off the field on a little more third downs. Not let them sustain some drive and have some time of possession. Yes. You'd love to see them get a turnover, get an interception, a tipped pass, or a forced fumble. Yes. But aside from that, holding the Bengals at home to 24 points when you're -2 on the turnover chart is a pretty good night.
Yeah. Time of possession was 36-38 for the Bengals to 23-22 for the Bills. And in the second half of this game, Steve, the Bengals went punt, turnover on downs, field goal, end of the game. And when the Bills defense needed to show up and tighten things up in the second half of the game to give their offense an opportunity to maybe tie things up or have the game within reach, they were able to do so. And I think that says a lot about Sean McDermott's play calling ability going up against an offense like the Bengals.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you have to tip your hat to the Bengals, they seem to have, with Lou Anarumo and his staff on the defensive side, and of course Zach Taylor on the offensive side, they really have a nice protocol and a staff about adjusting in game. I think both of these clubs got to it. I think the Bills' offense lagged a little bit behind Anarumo and his defense jumping out ahead, and I think McDermott finally got up on top of the Bengals and started to give them some problems defensively. So for a minute there, it looked like this game was going to be 55-55. And it turned out to be 18-24 because these defenses did figure some things out.
Yeah, it seemed like it was off to a scoring, and then some of those calls started to come in by the refs too, which slowed a little bit of how fast these two teams were going, at least to getting into the end zone early on. I want to go back to the Bills' offense here. We've seen this team throughout the season. We've seen what this group can be. We know what this offense can be, and it's frustrating to see this group go out there and put 18 points on the scoreboard when we know that they're capable of so much more, and when we know that Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and he has one of the best wide receivers in the NFL and Stephon Diggs to throw the ball to. But we've seen games where they're hot one week, then they're down the next week, then they get back to a little bit of where they should be, and then they're down the next week. What is the identity of this offense? Have they figured it out yet? Do you think there's still time for them to get back to what we saw they were at against the Miami Dolphins when they looked like they were on top of the world in that game?
Yeah, absolutely. There is. I mean, you and I were talking before we popped on the air here. In 2021, they were 7-6 going into Week 14 of the season. They won their last 4, and they had gotten healthy. And they were humming along right at the last point of the season. That's when they got to Kansas City and had their season ended there in Arrowhead at the 13-second game. That's kind of what you're hoping for. This is a playoff caliber team, but they've got to win games to get there, and they've got a very difficult schedule. So they've got to play at a high level every week. That's hard to sustain. It'll be interesting to see how the Bengals do through this mid-stretch of the season, through their next 4 or 5 games, going through the AFC North like they have to. It is really hard to play as good as the Bengals have been playing. Certainly, I wouldn't say their game tonight against the Bills was as good as their game last week against the 49ers, but they still got the win anyway. This Bills team offensively and I think defensively are going to have a lot more under the hood. There's no question they've got a lot more potential. They can score some points. We've seen it weeks 2 through 4. And I think the Bills are finding out more and more about their guys. Dalton Kincaid is becoming a real force in this offense. Steph Diggs, 7 targets with 6 receptions tonight, and the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. Shakir, 4 targets, 4 receptions. James Cook, 4 targets, 4 receptions. So, the only thing that you could look at right now and say, their wide receiver number 2 and Gabe Davis is not being productive enough. You'd like to see him have bigger numbers. He had two targets, no catches tonight from your number 2 wide receiver. Although, I think a lot of people would concede right at this point, Dalton Kincaid is the number 2 option on the offense in the passing game.
Yep.
So you can live with that.
Yeah, it's been looking like that through the last couple of weeks. We know Dawson Knox on the IR due to injury. Brandon Beane this week said we are going to get Dawson Knox back at some point this season. And you look at what the Bills have going on for the rest of the season, and we just passed week 9, so they've got the Broncos Monday Night Football here next week, week 10, then they go Jets at home, and then they go to Philadelphia to face the Eagles. Then they hit their Week 13 bye. With how injured this team is, and I know every year we say, oh, the bye week is coming at the perfect time because we have time to heal up. But truly, this season, with the injuries that this team is facing, they face a lot of injuries early on in the season, that a Week 13 bye, maybe you could be getting some of those guys back that were on IR or guys that went out quite early on in the season.
At least you'll have more choices with your roster. At least you have more guys available, you would think. And certainly some of them could come back in the next week or 2. It won't have to be on the bye week or in Kansas City when they come off the bye. It could be earlier than that as well. But no question, I spoke to Daquan Jones. He has full hopes and intent of coming back this season and being back in the lineup. If that were to happen and he could play at a high level, that would certainly give them a huge boost down inside, particularly now with Linval Joseph coming in. I thought Linval gave him some juice down early. And
he lifted up Joe Burrow and put him on the ground on one play.
It was an impressive play. Von Miller is getting his feet further and further under him as well. So I think you're right. That Week 13 bye, you need to get a couple of games over 500 by the time you get there. You need to be, a 7-4, 8-4, 9-4, something like that. You need to win 2 out of your next 3 at least to get there and go, what would that be, 7-5? That would be on pace to kind of hanging in there. But this is certainly a team with more under the hood, and getting healthy at that Week 13 bye would give you a nice 5-game stretch to finish the season.
Yeah, and I know we talked about the 2021 season and just comparing when the Bills were able to figure things out that year. I look back at that team, and that team, I think, was not as mature as this team is now. Looking at the guys that are still on the team that were in 2021, now they're a few years older, a few years wiser, and you just believe in 2023 with a quarterback who's older now, and some of your glue guys in the locker room who are older and wiser and have been through more games and have been through more playoff opportunities and kind of know what the moment means and know what they need to do to get to the postseason. I think about the group in terms of believing that they can do it even more than that 2021 group could, because they won 4 straight to finish out the season, and it just seemed like they were peaking at the right time, and that's a word that we're going to start talking about, maybe not early November, but soon enough here we'll be talking about the opportunity to peak and when it's going to come for these teams and when it's going to be important to peak. And the Bills haven't done that yet. We've seen win-loss here for the last several weeks. And if you can hang in there and you can get it together at the right point as you head into the end of the season, all is not lost.
That's right. It's been win-loss for 6 weeks. Since the win over the Dolphins, then they lose to Jacksonville, beat the Giants, lost to the Patriots, beat the Bucks, and now lost to the Cincinnati Bengals with the Denver Broncos on the horizon on Monday Night Football. So, you've got to play consistent. Wins and losses are great. You got to keep track. You got to win enough too. But if you can look good doing it, and it's hard to look good in defeat, but if you can score points, give yourself a chance, and maybe the other team, does something spectacular, whatever. It's always tough to feel good about your team when you're a defensive team. We've got a good defense, but this is a team that the barometer goes as Josh Allen and this offense goes. When they're scoring a lot of points, nobody's afraid of any opponent. But scoring 18 points this last week, 24 points the last week before that, and 25 points the week before that, and 14 before that, they haven't scored 30 points in quite some time. So they are not hitting on all cylinders offensively. But I think everybody knows it's under there somewhere. They got to find it.
I think a positive thing is you're starting to see players emerge, like we just talked about with Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, Stephon Diggs obviously has been on the scene since the season has started, being an impact player, and we would expect him to do so because he's just so talented at what he does, and he has many strengths in this game. I think we're hoping to see more out of a guy like Gabe Davis. But if you're looking at what happened in the NFL today, I mean, the Dolphins lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you're keeping score at home in terms of the AFC East, the Dolphins lost one today. We know the Kansas City Chiefs are in the conference. They pick up another win. The Jets, I believe, are playing on Monday Night Football this week against the Chargers. So paying attention to what other teams are doing in this division, in this conference as well. The Bengals actually picked up their first conference win today against the Bills.
Yeah, they've been struggling in their own conference, in the AFC North. Now, they did have a tough stretch to begin the season. They were 0-2 to begin the season, if you remember, because Joe Burrow, it was talked about a lot on the broadcast tonight, Joe Burrow pulling his calf muscle, not being able to get down they couldn't score any points. So they went loss, and they only scored 27 points in 2 games combined. Then they scored 19 against the Rams and beat them by 3. Then, of course, they had a 3-point game against Tennessee. So Cleveland, Baltimore, Tennessee all beat this team. And finally they get a win against the Bills.
And the Patriots lose to the Commanders today, 20-17. So a few AFC East teams losing in Week 9 of the NFL season. And we got to talk about another aspect of this game here, because it was the first game that Damar Hamlin came back to Cincinnati since January 2nd, the game where he collapsed on the field and suffered cardiac arrest. The team was asked about it all week. What was it going to be like going back to Cincinnati since that happened, since January 2nd? What is the atmosphere going to be like? How are you approaching going into a game like that? And everybody acknowledged, like, hey, everybody's going to experience this differently, going to go through this differently. Everybody's going to need to do different things to be able to take the field and go through a game like this. But we also need to focus on the fact that there is going to be a game played. And we have to, by the time that, the whistle blows for this game to start, we got to be locked in. But it was great to see that Damar Hamlin had dinner with a bunch of the doctors from UC Health, and he awarded the doctors with a scholarship in their name for Cincinnati youth. And we've seen the good that Damar Hamlin has done since January 2nd and quickly leaving the hospital and getting better, and now a part of this team on this roster, able to play, and he's made such an impact in the community as well, teaching people about CPR and everything. Yeah,
the ripple effects of the incident that happened last year continue to be felt and continue to widen. But I think this too, the game tonight, I think, kind of put a bow on the entire incident. Now I think that everybody, both the people in Cincinnati, the Damar, the team, kind of proved tonight that, okay, that everything's going to be great. And, everything's back to normal, I think. And I think this was the final bow on that incident. And while the ripple effects are still being felt in positive things with, CPR training around the country, awareness of it.
Access to AEDs.
That's
and
right.
things like
Access.
That.
It's just been fantastic. And Damar, the work he's done and continues to do on behalf of of the incident and for all those involved. It's been great. But tonight, I think on the football side of it, it was a very nice conclusion to that a year later getting a game under their belt, having no real incidents like that, and being able to see Damar on the sidelines.
Yeah, definitely good to see this team go out there and see Damar's smile on the sideline. They cut to him a couple times during the broadcast, and he was smiling and joking with teammates. So great to see him take the field in that regard as well. We are hanging on for Sean McDermott. We are awaiting him on the podium. He will meet with reporters soon here, as this team is probably packing up, getting ready to leave Cincinnati, head back to Buffalo. And this week will be a different week for this team, as we expect them to land early Monday morning now, with it being past midnight. So it is Monday morning now. But this team will have a longer week as they get ready for Monday Night Football against the Denver Broncos. So we would expect the practice schedule to be a little bit different, but you go 2 long weeks. So you go from Thursday Night Football to Sunday Night Football, and now you go from Sunday Night Football to Monday Night Football. And you think about what 2 long weeks in the middle of the NFL season, at the halfway point of the season, can do for injuries. Would you expect some good to come out of an extra day to prepare for a game against the Broncos?
Absolutely. The players will feel it, especially in their preparation. By the time the game gets there, they're fresh, and they kind of always try to feel fresh, but they'll feel it earlier in the week, or later in the week, I guess, because it'd be an extra day. It helps your preparation when you feel better during the week. And I know it sounds simple, but when you feel better, you play better, you practice better, you work out better, your meetings, you're more focused, and that extra day really goes a long way. And it'll also be one of those things where the schedule is one of those where they're going to have to get their routine down and get their mind around knowing they're going to have some extra time and an extra day to get some stuff, either get some stuff done or installed, or extra film study, and however they want to use it, use it wisely, and it'll make a difference.
Yeah. I want to ask you just about the stats here through 9 weeks for this team, and we would expect to know some of these stats are going to change now that they have another game under their belts as we approach Week 10. But heading into this Week 9 game, the Bills ranked 4th, averaging 27.75 points per game, and they also were 2nd in red zone efficiency, almost 70% of the time they were scoring touchdowns in the red zone. What does that say about this offense? We just talked about how they're win-loss, and not really putting 30-plus points on the scoreboard, but yet still statistically, they still rank really high.
Yeah, they've got a big engine. They can light it up, and we saw it. It was confined to weeks 2, 3, and 4 basically, because that's where they scored most of their points, and you can tell that kind of pumped up their averages. They haven't scored 30 points. They haven't scored more than 25 points since the 48 shellacking they put on the Dolphins, but they had scored 37 and 38 before that. So now they're getting up into the mid-20s the last couple of games between the Patriots and the Bucs. But this is still a team where, and I think also in a couple of these games, particularly in the Bucs game, they get deep into the second half, and I think some analytics creep in there, and they're more concerned about time of possession than they are scoring points. Scoring points would be the aggressive move, but they'd have to put the ball at risk to do that. And they would rather force the other team to go the long way down 2 scores and rather strangle themselves by the time they turn it over or score. There's only 2 minutes left and the Bills can kneel it down, which is what happened to the Tampa Bay. And we've seen that happen over the course of the last few years when they're in such control of the game. They take their foot off the gas on the scoreboard and strangle the clock.
Right.
They're good enough to do both of those things. And I think the scoreboard, when you come down to the end of these games and these teams come in, they get to 1 score, but they just run out of time. I think that's more about the Bills than it is that of the team.
Yeah, well, hopefully they'll go back to the tape this week and learn from all the things, get better, and get ready for a Monday Night Football game against the Denver Broncos. All right, our head coach, Sean McDermott, on the podium, so let's get right over to him.
Okay, came up short tonight against a good football team. Just too inconsistent overall, not enough complimentary football. Turned the ball over twice. I thought the defense got off to a slow start, the first drive in particular. The second drive they scored as well, and that really came down to 2 plays, the roughing the passer penalty on Tim, and then the third down I thought was a critical third down conversion there. And then I thought we settled in defensively and had a couple short fields before half there that I thought we did well with up until that 3rd and 10, and we were in a man coverage, and we got a little greedy and ran past our man, and he dumped it to him. And so I thought in the second half they settled in, needed to get a stop at the end right there. But overall, just too much inconsistencies in the kicking game, as well as just the offense overall. Some good plays, and then but not enough of them. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
From your perspective, what did you see from the offense from that first drive where it seemed like everything was working to the lull that it kind of had the rest of the half?
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant. I thought we got off to a really good start in a rhythm, and then after that it was tough sledding, and so that can't happen, right? Against a good football team that's known for scoring points, and a good quarterback, you got to be able to score points, and we didn't do it enough, obviously.
It worked for you going up tempo last game. It seemed to take you a while to get there this game. Why do you think it took so long to maybe push the pace as you did a little bit later in the game?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you right now. I've got to look into that. But I know what you mean. I saw it at the end as well, and we moved the ball. So.
What explanation did you get on the grounding call there at the end of the first half? And you talk all the time about scoring right before the half, and then you get the ball back. Yeah. Is that a swing there?
Yeah, no, it was a swing, and I think that we had a chance to points, and then we give up that, like I said, that 3rd and 10. I think we turned the ball over. We get off the field. We come back. We get sacked. We punt it out to around the logo, somewhere around midfield. We have them 3rd and 10, and a chance to win that series also off a short field again. And I thought we just got a little bit greedy with our man coverage, and we ran past our coverage, and he dumped it because we had the coverage we were looking for, and he made a play, and we got to be a little bit more disciplined there. That's that one hurt right there, but. The grounding piece, look, they made the call. That happens, I think, quite a bit in the NFL, where a guy cuts off. And I understand what they saw, but I also understand what happens. So we go with what they call.
And Sean, at 5-4, you mentioned complementary football. It seems like every game now is a different issue. Is your frustration level rising that there's just going to be too many holes in the boat, so to speak, to plug?
No, we've got to continue to coach and continue to play hard and find ways to win. That's what you do in this league. You got to find ways to win, and it starts up front on both sides of the ball, establishing the line of scrimmage. I thought I didn't think we did enough of that tonight. Again, at times it was there, but not enough, and we got to feed each other, right? And right now it's too inconsistent.
Defense hasn't had an interception since the Dolphins game. How much of a concern is that, and how do you got to find a way to make some turnovers?
Well, it's making plays on the ball, and then and again, when you're talking about the defense, it's, hey, are we putting enough pressure on the quarterback? Are we usually turnovers happen either by just a poor decision by a quarterback, but more times than not, it's when you can affect the quarterback, when the quarterback's getting affected, and the rush and the coverage are working together. And again, tonight I didn't feel like we were able to affect him enough, especially on the early downs.
Why did you work Russell Douglas about how you thought it'd be?
He was in there, yeah, and he was in there, and then we had some injuries, and I thought he did some good things.
Can he add to his role as he picks up more of this defense in the next 9 days?
We'll see. Yeah, I would expect so, and I applaud him. He came in. Both LJ and Russell did a good job of trying to learn on a short week. And to go out there and play an NFL game with basically 2 days of practice was impressive.
What needs to change offensively? Just so much inconsistency, especially.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you, but consistency is let's just start there, right? More consistent, establishing the line of scrimmage. I thought last week we spread the ball around. Tonight, not as much, and so I thought there was times when Josh had time back there, and from the looks of it, maybe nobody was open, you know. So we got to look at that and say, hey, why aren't we open? And when he has time, and I think that's where we got to start.
What trend has that been? The lack of productivity from guys that are not, I guess, Stefan in the last couple of weeks, Dalton.
When you say lack of productivity from
Like today, Gabe didn't have a catch.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, you mentioned Steph and Dalton. I didn't know where you're going with that.
like those guys for sure, but after that,
Yeah, I mean it's you know it's you got to have more than two, right? And so obviously Steph and Dalton are you know heavy hitters for us, and they get their targets. But when you're getting into a rhythm and you know the run is working with the pass is working with the run, and they go hand in hand, and just too inconsistent tonight.
By saying establishing the line of scrimmage, are you insinuating getting more effective running the ball?
Well, I think we ran the ball 8 times maybe with the running backs, and Josh had some scrambles and 1 or 2 design runs in there. I think it was 1, but you know you got to do that in order to move the chains and keep a good offense off the field, and I think that's all part of being a good offense is being two-dimensional. Not that you're going to be 50-50 totally balanced, but the threat of being two-dimensional.
Sean, do you worry about the confidence of your team? You say you check in on those things. It's been a rough stretch.
Yeah.
Is that a concern? I know you have leaders on this team to help with that, but is it a concern of yours?
No, it's not. You know, these guys do a great job. They're invested, and look, it's tough to win in the NFL. You go against a good football team, you got to do things right, and we didn't do enough things right tonight in order to win.
They had 9 pass plays for 15 or more yards. Did they do something that you didn't think, or is it just a matter of being out of position?
It was just no. I mean, you know, we just nothing we didn't think that they would do. Really, the first drive, I thought we weren't settled in, and then after that, I thought we settled in. Believe it or not, you know, we had the penalty, and then we had the critical 3rd down, and so just continuing to work on our rushing coverage, working together, and I just didn't think overall that you know we made enough of an impact on the quarterback tonight up front.
Are you satisfied with the progress that Von's made in his recovery since beginning the season on the PUP list?
He's working as hard as he possibly can. You know, like I've said before, Von is Von, and Von's going to continue to work hard, and he has that resume for a reason, and he's coming off of an ACL. I think that's where he is, and he continues to hopefully improve every week.
Sean, you mentioned injuries to corner. Is that what happened to Christian? Why he didn't get
Christian tweaked his hamstring, so he got pulled out, and then Dane at the end of the game there as well. So not his hamstring, but something else with Dane. So, all right, thanks, guys.
All right, a couple more injuries we'll have to monitor there with Christian Benford and Dane Jackson, as Sean McDermott said, but not enough complimentary football, too much inconsistency out of both sides of the ball, and he wanted to see a little bit more pressure out of his defensive line. I thought the offense got off to a nice start, but then stalled there, and you can't do something like that against a team like the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, they did pressure the quarterback. They get in on Joe Burrow a few times. One is the obvious call we've all been talking about, is the roughing the passer. They got some pressure on him. He got the ball away, but they also got to him a little bit earlier as well, and he had flushed him out of the pocket and forced him to run with the football. It's not something he does usually. He's a really good athlete, and he used it to his advantage tonight. So they weren't totally bereft of pressure, but they did, when they do get pressure, they need to keep a guy like that hemmed in, like the teams tried to do with Josh Allen as well. Joe Burrow made a couple of critical 3rd down or 1st down conversions with his legs tonight, and I don't think that's something most people think about when they think about Joe. The guy's, no question, Joe Burrow is money, and you've got to be hitting on all cylinders defensively or get him to the ground once in a while. They got him on the ground a couple of times, tackled him a couple of times, even hard. But that was a team that was really, really on it tonight, and I wasn't as disappointed in the pass pressure as what it sounded like Coach was,
right?
Because they were getting the ball out on time and fast, and when they didn't, the pressure was getting there, but they just couldn't get him on the ground.
Yeah. According to Next Gen Stats, Joe Burrow was under pressure on 40% of his snaps in the first half, so a pretty high number. It'll be interesting to see what those second half numbers are once we get them. Tonight's game is presented by the BFLO Store. The BFLO Store is the official retailer of the Buffalo Bills, and before we go, we want to get to Insider's Take with Chris Brown.
The Bengals continue to be a bugaboo franchise for the Bills. Buffalo's offense kept pace early, but Cincinnati mixed their coverages. Buffalo gained yards, but the Bengals did not give up any big plays until Stephon Diggs' 22-yard touchdown reception late in the fourth quarter. And 2 turnovers by the Bengals, including one defending their red zone, took points off the board for Buffalo. The Bills defense again had to play shorthanded, losing middle linebacker Terrell Bernard to a head injury and safety Micah Hyde to a stinger. They also did not have Christian Benford for the last quarter and a half of the game. Buffalo is now 1-4 in the conference as they've traded wins and losses each of the last 6 weeks. At Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati, I'm Chris Brown for Bills Postgame Live.
All right, thanks, Chris. Ticketmaster is the presenting sponsor of the Buffalo Bills 2023 season. Ticketmaster, the official ticket marketplace of the NFL, and we approach Week 10 with a Monday Night Football matchup against the Denver Broncos at home. And after that, we've got a few 425 games. So focusing on Week 10 here, Steve, what does this team have to do to get right for Monday night?
Well, certainly getting some guys healthy would help, but also I don't think they need to overhaul everything, but there is some things they should do. I think Ken Dorsey, if you're going to talk about what they can do better coaching, to get on top of it a little quicker when they adjust, to anticipate what the defense is going to adjust to what you're doing and make some adjustments out ahead of that and try and get out ahead. They did that later in the game and go to what they have done well. Dalton Kincaid has become a force. He had 10 catches tonight for 80 yards. His own long was only 13. So every catch was right at between 8 and 12 yards. So he is playing really well, and he's a high-volume target. The only target he missed was the first throw of the game that Josh threw 200 miles an hour, and the guy couldn't even get his hands up fast enough to catch it. So go to him. They also, I would say, too, they're probably going to start rotating guys in for Gabe Davis. They're probably going to change his role a little bit just because of the lack of production in the passing game. Certainly he can block in the run game, and he does that, but you need a number 2 wide receiver that catches the ball and gets open and is an outlet for the quarterback. Gabe hasn't done enough of that yet.
The Bills only had 68 rushing yards in this one, too. Josh Allen had some of that, but it'd be nice to see James Cook and those guys getting going as well. We know Damian Harris is still hurt. Latavius Murray get in there as well. And then we'll see if Leonard Fournette gets activated over the next few weeks as he is currently on the practice squad. All right, that's going to do it for us for Bills Post-Game Live. We want to thank you for joining us. The Bills now 5-4 on the season. We will see you next week after Monday Night Football.